Hello, 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 and welcome to Project Possible with me, Rich Leigh. It's been a brilliant week in terms of Project Possible. I have really loved the reaction to Trevor Woodman's episode, considering Trevor is nowhere to be seen on social media and is not one of those sharey type people. In fact, that might be one of the reasons why the episode's gone down so well, is because he was part of the 2003 England World Cup winning squad. But he's one of those people you just don't really hear from. You know, you don't see him in plenty. You don't see him cropping up on TV doing too much in the way of interviews. So to sit down with him for a couple of hours, more than, and chat about his experiences, his career, his highs, his lows, all of that was brilliant, and it seems to have resonated. So thank you. We ended up charting it 55, so the highest that this podcast has ever been on Apple's podcast charts. We got to number 55 in the genre of podcast that this is. So chuffed with that. But that aside, for regular listeners, viewers, I'm still doing my thing. I'm still moving, still hitting steps, back at the gym, and everything hurts right now. So doing that, I don't know what I'll share or what I won't. I have taken some photos, and again, there was a thing that I saw a month or two back that said success is on the other side of cringe. And I don't know, is it too cringeworthy? Who knows? But I might share some things because I've got some friends essentially saying I feel like I've been as low as I can possibly be in the last year, following the death of my brother Jordan, who took his own life. February 7th is coming around soon. It's, as of recording this, it's 2 weeks tomorrow. So I need to be in a good place physically, mentally, and I'm trying, eating well, let's say exercising, not drinking myself into oblivion, which I was doing. Again, might talk about that a bit more. But really, just trying to be in the best place. And I'm doing okay, doing okay. So yeah, hopefully it continues. I want it to. I think I found that bit of me that used to be quite bloody minded and would run at challenges and think, yeah, why can't I? And yeah, I feel I can see a bit of that old Rich kind of resurfacing. So anyway, I'm really excited. Today's episode is with Mary Mandefield. Mary is a radio host and a TV presenter. She most recently presented a show on Channel 4 called Red Flags, Are We Dating the Same Guy? And it's all about these Facebook groups that have popped up that women only, kind of, based around city centre or cities. And you got the same over in the States, I think. And women join these groups. It's like almost a couple of 100,000 in the London Are We Dating the Same Guy group. And women talk about guys they're dating. And yeah, as it says, red flags or, get tips, advice. Mary called it kind of big sister advice. There is a voyeuristic aspect to this. There's an entertainment aspect to this, in that Mary admits maybe some, you're going through this group and, that's funny, let me share that. And what that forgets is, of course, the person on the other end of those posts. So those guys that are being talked about. And one of the rules of the group, very Fight Club, is that you don't talk about the group, and you certainly, even if you know a guy that's being talked about in the group, you don't tell them. So it's kind of, there's no due process or due course of justice almost. It's just like, no, this is who this guy is. I'm telling people this is who he is. And you could probably imagine the pros and cons of these groups, and we really get into it. I think it's fascinating. This for me is a curiosity gap, a knowledge gap episode where, obviously I'm a bloke, I don't know anything about these groups. The program is eye-opening. We look at the reason they exist, how women are feeling about dating in 2026, and the kind of the risks inherent in doing so. We talk about technology. We talk about the men on the other side of this, and really get into that. I think it's a really fascinating topic, and this is happening. Is it possible to date safely, happily, healthily in 2026? Is it possible to date without worrying that you're going to do or say something stupid, and that ends up in a group where potentially hundreds of thousands of people are, laughing at your misfortune, or picking your picking you apart. It's a weird world, right? But as I say, Curiosity Gap episode. Let's go into this with the right intentions and curiosity, and and I hope I did, going into this with okay, let's try and understand why these exist. So yeah, that's what it's all about. I'll leave you to it now. Without further ado, I bring to you my conversation with Mary Mandefield. Enjoy. Mary, thank you so much for coming on. I watched the documentary Red Flags, Are We Dating the Same Men last night. Jesus Christ.
It was interesting. It was an interesting project to work on, for sure.
When did you actually work on it? Like, when did you film it?
Over the course of the summer, really. So quite recent, and I guess in TV world, that's sometimes quite a quick turnaround. But it's meant that it's all still fresh in my mind of having the conversations with different people, doing the research, that it's quite nice, rather than some projects where you have to wait a year before it comes out and then jumpstart your memory again.
When you started it, what did you think it was going to be? And what surprised you the most?
Do you know what? I think I had known about these Facebook groups, right? So this documentary is kind of centered on these Facebook groups called Are We Dating the Same Guy? And I'm sure we'll get into it more in depthly, but I was part of these Facebook groups for a couple of years, not using them because I was like dating, but just using them to see what was going on. It's like kind of entertainment and kind of gossip in these groups. And, me and a couple of friends would screenshot things and send it to each other, just like, oh my God, have you seen this? Have you seen what's been going on? And so when, I ended up joining forces with a production company where they'd been researching these groups from a lot more of a professional sense, I was like, okay, this is interesting, because it's something where I'm familiar with them, but I've not thought about it from the other point of view. I've not thought about it from a male perspective. I've not thought about it from a victim's perspective. I'd only thought about it the way that me and my friends kind of saw it, as quite a light-hearted thing. So going into it, it was a lot of curiosity, of like, okay, how do I kind of remove my own already pre-existing thoughts about it and try and come into this with a fresh view.
What did surprise you the most as you got into it?
I'd say what actually was surprising is how many people had a story. And obviously in these kinds of documentaries, they're quite short, they're like 25 minutes long. And that's great because you can kind of get it in front of people's eyes. And, if you're interested, you just kind of dip your toe in and you get a grasp of it. But actually what you don't see is that we had so many conversations with so many people who have been victims of sexual assault or manipulation, or people have just been cheated on and lied to, and they've come to these groups as a little bit of a beacon of hope of, I just want to get it off my chest, I just want to tell someone, or I want to have my feelings validated. And those stories have continued now that the documentary is out there. My DMs, I was surprised that even on platforms like LinkedIn, people almost want a chance to talk about relationships and to talk about times where they feel like maybe they've been, done badly. And so then it's like I've given them that door and they've been like, okay, let me walk in and tell you this happened to me and that happened to me and this happened to me. And it's like, okay, so yeah, that's what surprised me. Is that,
do you think there's enough in that to do a follow-up to the program? Is that something you're talking about?
100%. There's so much scope to do more. Like when I say that, the stories in the groups themselves are constant, like hundreds of posts a day, everything ranging from I went on one date with this guy and he was a bit off, to full blown, this person had another family, they had a fake name, they have gotten someone else pregnant. There's so much that goes into it, that I think there's always scope to kind of do a follow-up.
It's crazy. I think to your point there, we kind of see these things as entertainment, we don't think of the people on both sides necessarily as real, because I guess we're conditioned through, celebrity media diets to just see these people as almost disposable, and they're kind of just this 2D version of themselves. And I think it comes across, in research for chatting to you, and a few times in the documentary where people do use it like that. They do use it exactly as you said, where it's almost, hey, this is a funny thing, let me share it with a friend, forgetting exactly that. You seem genuinely torn in the film. How did your personal view shift as you made it?
That's a good question. I think my views are constantly changing on it, and ultimately, like, my job as a journalist is to kind of share research, conversations, and things that are going on behind the scenes with the average person who doesn't have hours and hours to dig into a topic that they might have seen in passing or heard in passing. So I do see that as my role of, I'm not here to tell you how to feel about it. I'm not here to actually show you this really upsets me, or I feel really strongly about this. At the end of the day, I'm a woman, and I'm a single woman. And so I know the realities of dating. There's been plenty of times where I personally haven't felt safe, or I felt like I'm not getting the whole truth from someone I'm dating. And so of course I'm going to naturally like bring a certain level of bias to that. That's, it's quite hard to remove any of that. But then on the other side, I have plenty of friends that are guys who are also dating, and then they also come to me with stories where they feel like it's a really difficult time to let your guard down and get to know someone, because we're all coming into it feeling, like a bit, not, I don't want to say jaded, I don't really like that word, but we've all kind of got our guards up.
How difficult is dating right now?
Do you know what? I don't like to say it's difficult, because there's so many good points to it, and it can be so fun. And I think it's like the antidote that so many of us need at the moment. It's just light relief. And, actually it is so lovely sometimes to meet someone totally new. They've got no preconceived expectations of you. You can almost reinvent yourself on the date and put on a bit of a character. And I think that is really good for us. I think being social and just having that face-to-face interaction is so good, and it's so healthy. And even if you're not looking for a long-term relationship, just going out and meeting new people, I think can't be, a bad thing if everyone is safe. But essentially, a lot of the time you are meeting a stranger, and there's lots of things that we do as women to just kind of look after ourselves. So it might be asking this guy for his full name so we can just do a little check online. Maybe you can see if you have any mutual friends, looking at his socials. And it might then feel like it gets too far, but you're like, I do want to know where they work, because that's going to give me a bit of an idea of them. I do want to know what area they live in. I do want to know, do they have friends? Do they have hobbies? And so, we're doing those things, but then that's before you even get to the date. Once you're on the date, you're then thinking of, what are my surroundings? Who can I call in case of anything? And also, what is my outlet? If he does say something that's a bit weird, or a joke that doesn't quite hit right, is it a safe space to just message a friend or voice note a friend whilst I've gone to the toilet to be like, this is weird, what do you think I should do? And I just think there are a lot of people who don't have that support system, and they're going to a Facebook group for it.
If you'd seen that you had mutual friends with the guy, like, would you, and you knew that person pretty well, would you speak to them about that guy? I'm intrigued now. It's from like completely opposite side, isn't it? So I just have I'm almost an idiot when it comes to this stuff. So you would.
I would just say, hey, how do you know so and so? And also, I feel like you don't really need to ask too much. If they're like, like, do you know what I mean? My guy friends would kind of, if it's a girlfriend, they'd say, like immediately they'd be like, don't go there, or don't bother, or do you know what? He's only gonna waste your time. And it's like, okay, cool, thanks. And that has saved me a whole evening.
Do you think that paradox of choice, the fact that there is so much choice out there now, and do you think we're quicker to judge people now than we kind of maybe ever have been? And do you think that, something that 20, 30 years ago, somebody would have been like, well, that's a silly thing that you just did or said, is now just this enormous character trait flaw?
Do you know what? I quite like to almost change the narrative of dating, because I think often we see dating as there's a start and there's an end point, and the end goal is long-term relationship,
Sure.
which usually looks like marriage for people.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think a lot of people now are dating for so many other reasons. It might be almost a kind of networking, you want to widen your social circle because it might help you with your career. It might be that you've moved to a new city and you're just looking to meet new people. It might be that you just want to hook up with people. And I think we have to make sure that when we're talking about dating, the person you're speaking to, you're both on the same page, because I'm not dating to marry. But so if someone says something that's a bit off, I might be like, well, my husband would never say that, but I don't really care. Like, that's not what I'm looking for right now. And so maybe that is, and we have that choice because we have things like dating apps. There is almost an endless stream of potential people to go out with. But I think communication is so key. And, men and women both struggle with that at times. But as long as you're on the same page of what are we actually kind of doing this for, maybe we want to go on 3 really fun dates and call it a day. And then that's okay if you're then going to look for the next person, or you're going to cool off for a bit and say, I want a year without dating anyone. That's totally fine. But I think as long as people understand that we don't always have the same end goal.
Do you think dating is fundamentally unsafe for women?
Yeah, but existing is unsafe for women. There's not a single place in the world where you're better off to be a woman. There's not a single place in the world where you're safe to be a woman. And actually, so much domestic violence happens in the home, happens between people who know each other, the same with sexual assault. So, statistically, women are more likely to be victims of it. And that's, it's like a difficult thing because you want to be able to have this open conversation without pitching the two against each other. But I think I will always say, as a woman, people will say, well, walking home late at night or, living on your own. It's all unsafe for women, but so is being in a relationship, being in a marriage or it comes on both parties, putting the onus on a certain someone to protect yourself. It doesn't work like that. And I think dating is just one of those where you can do your very best, but you're kind of going into it hopefully with a bit of optimism.
Is it hard to feel optimistic?
With dating or with working on
with dating in general? Yeah, well, both. You've seen some pretty dark things on both sides, and we'll get into the horrible counter bloody Telegram, groups that were set up that completely for different reasons. Is it hard to stay optimistic? It's really, you seem like a pretty optimistic person to me.
I'm quite positive just by nature, but you are talking to people who really have had their lives turned upside down by something that they went into with an equally optimistic kind of feeling about it. And so that's really tough to kind of sit down and have these conversations, knowing that these things really stick with people. And I think anyone who's experienced any form of sexual violence, that it comes up at different times in your life. You might think you don't need therapy for it, but it might kind of show itself at another time. Whether you've had experience dealing with the police and whether that's been impactful, positive or not. So I think I feel a huge responsibility having these sensitive conversations and hopefully showing those to people in the documentary and showing them that, it's never black and white. It's never black and white.
Well, you mentioned the police then. Most people, women in the documentary particularly, seem to have this feeling, not trusting the police, absolutely, but the police in particular. Why do you think that is? What's kind of at the root of that view?
It's the fact that any criminal case involving rape it takes a seriously long time, and
I've got the stats here. 5 in 6 women who are raped won't report it to the police. It's 306 days. This is from the documentary. 306 days to get a decision, even in court, whether that's guilty or not. 2 years from reporting to a verdict in court. So we're talking about most people won't report.
Yeah.
And even when they do, it takes years, and conviction rates are incredibly low, as we know. What could the authorities do? What could the police do to improve that?
Almost this sits alongside a lot of other crimes against women that of course you're going to have more than even just a hesitation, and the fact that you're going to have to relive your trauma, almost prove yourself. You know, and a lot of the time people just want to get on with their lives, and having something taking an average of 2 years means it halts your life completely. And so, you know, putting something on pause like that, and I think any victim, what they want is justice, but they're not in control of it. And so, you know, the bigger picture, of course there needs to be a better understanding from the police. There needs to be better training, there needs to be more sensitivity, but that's not something that needs to be fixed just for cases like this. It's a wider problem, I think, especially within London, and it's highly reported about the issues within the Met Police. I'm not the expert on what needs to change, but what I can see is that women who are years down the line from reporting something or experiencing something, being victim of something, is that they just want to live their lives, they just want to get on with things, and I think that would be the best outcome, is that all victims feel like they can actually do that.
Do you think these groups would exist if the police, the data apps, these people taking their jobs seriously, doing their jobs properly?
Yeah, I think the groups would still exist, because not everything is about criminal behavior and criminal activity. And, you know, for anyone who's not seen these groups or maybe doesn't know much about these groups, basically they're used either before you go on a date with someone, where you might post their picture and their first name in the group and just ask this consensus of people, of which in the London group there's 180,000 members.
Wow,
And then
is that
there's
right?
Yeah, and then there's separate groups all over the UK and
Well,
all over the
we
world.
should also say, just for anybody watching and listening to this that hasn't been on one of these, like myself, you have to get like vetted, right? There's kind of an early vetting process. Like, basically, are you a woman? Aren't you? Is that essentially the question that's asked?
Yeah, and all the groups are kind of run a bit differently, because they're run by different moderators, and it's not
Right.
like there's one singular owner above everyone. It's not like a franchise. It's just people maybe have seen that their town or their city doesn't have one, and you could just set it up, have some volunteer moderators, and just get going with it. But yeah, you have to be a woman to be in the group, and you have to follow the rules, which are to not talk about the group outside of it. So I'm breaking one of those rules now. It's to not share any of the information with the person who's been posted. So if you saw your brother in there, or your colleague, you shouldn't be informing them that they've been posted on the group.
Wow.
And yeah, people will just ask, like, look, does anyone know anything about this guy? Have you dated him? Have you had any experiences? And people also use it, say they have dated someone and they've had a negative experience, they post it in there to warn other people. So imagine it like Trustpilot, but for someone you're dating. But of course, in there it's just women, and you're not really sharing positive reviews, because if you were, you maybe would still be with that person. So you've kind of got two sides, but I definitely think the groups would still exist, even if you know, the criminal proceedings were perfect, because there's lots of conversation in there that just acts as a resource for women who are dating. And it's almost like having big sister advice of what should I do if he's not text me back? Oh, he's been a bit funny with me and he's changed the password on his phone. Do you have any advice? And I think that kind of conversation in there is so valuable. And actually, we don't have other places like that where women can kind of speak openly and often anonymously. So there's no fear of judgment. There's no fear of being shamed in there.
So in these groups, you can post anonymously.
Yeah.
I see. So I mean, I guess to your point there's an aspect to this. It does feel like the community support. But then I guess the flip side is that digital vigilantism almost, and that's the concern here. It's you touched on the moderators, and obviously they don't have training, but huge power essentially to. And you touched on this in the documentary when you spoke to the lady from Manchester, or the one that did the group up there. Is that sustainable?
It baffles me, to be honest, because there is so much activity in some of these groups that, like, the posts are constant, and those are the posts we see. So, you know, before they go on the main page, they have to be approved. And so I do think they run a well-oiled machine for the fact that they can just organize the posts coming out. And I mean, I do wonder because we don't know these people, we don't know these moderators, and whether someone's got an ulterior motive or maybe just a naivety.
Well, as a viewer last night, the Manchester moderator said, I wrote it down so I don't want to get it wrong. She said the last time I used a dating app, the man turned out to be aggressive. And that was one of her reasons. I'm very sure. Again, you said it's a 25-minute documentary, right? So it's very clipped. I'm sure she said much, much more.
Yeah.
So it's almost coming from a place of starting the group from hostility. It's like, hey, the last time I used a dating app, he was aggressive. That guy was aggressive, so I started this. So that might color her moderation and approval process and things like that a tiny bit. And there's. In these groups again, the whole don't talk about a fight club, don't talk about outside of it thing. We're not talking about specific ones here, but are there ever posts in there that you as a community go, ooh, don't know how that got approved?
Yeah, and I will say with the comment that the moderator made, that is totally valid, but also every single woman is coming from a place of hostility when it comes to dating, because I've not met a woman who hasn't had a bad dating experience. And obviously that just ranges from inconvenient and annoying to full-blown dangerous. So I think everyone is coming with their real world perspectives of like, oh my gosh. And everyone in the group, you wouldn't join the group unless you'd had a bad dating experience, because you either want someone to resonate with or you want to share. Sorry, what was your second question? It was about what gets approved.
As a community, do you ever look in there and go, and does anybody ever say like, God, this is a bit close to the bone? I don't know how this, this is a real person. Does that ever get said?
Yeah, and I do think there's almost the community will come together to call something out, either when they think like, hey, like, I don't think you should have posted this because there doesn't seem to be a problem here. They might have posted a screenshot of a conversation they had, or a guy cancelled on a date, and people might come and say, look, he's allowed to cancel. He might have had a bad day, whatever. And there is that almost accountability in there, and that big sisterness of like, look, I think you might be having a bad day and go easy on him or whatever. I think there is a lot of people are very forgiving. But at the same time, there's times when people almost have to jump in and say, look, you're actually being treated really badly here, and maybe you don't even realize. Because people will, you'll see a story play out of a girl talking about someone she's dating. Maybe someone then says, actually, he's cheating and I've got evidence, I've got proof, and then the girl saying, well, I'm not going to leave him, or I believe it, or whatever. And a lot of time people will jump in and say, look, if you were my best friend, I'd tell you this, or if you were my sister, I'd tell you this. And so there is a lot of kindness and care in there, which I think is really lovely to see, because if I had that maybe in my early years of dating, maybe in my early 20s, I probably would have made better choices just from seeing like what the standard should be. But everything is up to interpretation. We're often only getting one side of the story, and so you have to take everything with a pinch of salt.
One thing that struck me as you were talking then about groups in general is, do you remember a few years ago, I don't know how old you are, Mary, but I'm 38, a few years ago, where Facebook was almost deemed a tiny bit irrelevant and becoming less and less relevant, right? And it's obviously Instagram and TikTok. Do you think it's made Facebook relevant again?
It is so interesting because, I spoke to a lot of people who say, I don't use Facebook for anything else. Like, I just go on there, check the group, and that's it.
And I guess it validates your identity in that sense of, on Instagram, I could create a woman's account in 2 minutes, right? But on Facebook, it's that bit more difficult. And typically it's your used profile. So, it just struck me then. I was like, everybody's banging on about how Facebook was nothing like a few years ago.
It's really interesting how it's such a platform for it. And I'd say the only other equivalent I guess I've seen to these groups when it comes to women coming together is on Reddit threads. Right. And I do think the thing that they've got in common is that you don't feel like you need to come with almost like a social currency of this person's more important than this person because they've got these followers or they're an influencer or something like that. And because you can post anonymously on the Facebook group, it's kind of like you know it's only women in there, but then you can come without any background. And I don't know, I think I've just seen a similar kind of conversation on Reddit, and people have tried to set up equivalents on things like Instagram and TikTok, but you just don't kind of harbor that same sense of community.
The same community.
And obviously they can be infiltrated a lot. These tech companies, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whatever, what they decide to be acceptable for their platforms, because the groups like Are We Dating the Same Guy were actually, came up on a lot of people's feeds on their recommended groups to join. So they never even sought them out. Facebook was actually pushing them as, is this
I guess it will see if a load of people in your area beginning to follow it, just like, the local groups, the spotted groups and all of that. I guess it probably does it by like algorithmic density. It's like, oh, loads of people in your area have joined this, so hence recommended. We touched on that digital vigilantism side of things. You did speak to men for this. What would you say to a man that you saw on there? And you said that you can't say to them, but what would you say to somebody who does wake up one day and finds himself posted there unfairly, incorrectly? What would you say to that person if you knew for a fact that wasn't what was levied at them wasn't fair?
It is really tricky. And I don't have any brothers, but the male friends in my life, everyone likes to think, oh, my friend wouldn't do something like that, or my cousin wouldn't do something like that. But actually, I think doing this documentary has reminded me, like, we don't know, like, we really don't know. And even if it's someone that you're the closest to in the whole world, I don't think it's always appropriate to say, well, I'm going to stand firm on the fact that he would never do this, and therefore this person must be lying. It's such a sensitive kind of topic, and it's, you do kind of go into the mode of, well, what can I find out about this? How can I build this picture? Can I maybe talk to him and be like, is there someone you're dating at the moment? What's going on there? Is there been, miscommunication? What's happening? But I think as women, we have to be really careful not to jump in and say, well, I dated him and he never did anything to me, or I work with him and he's never done anything to me, because that's just not how abuse works.
No, but I mean, we see it with allegations sometimes where it can completely ruin somebody's life, and suicide is essentially the way out for some people, right? I don't know, it's like the genie's at the bottom now. And that's the problem with this, isn't it? It's because everybody's judge, jury, and executioner. Sorry, I love hot fuzz. So everybody is playing this role of almost an online internet sleuth. It's like we do it for fun, right? And I mean, what was that celebrity? The ... Oh, was it Colleen Rooney and
Rebecca Vardy?
That was it. And we all watched that play out and enjoyed it.
We love it.
And again, that online sleuth kind of aspect of it, it's like, I think it is Pandora's box is open, and Jesus Christ, how do you help people who are kind of unfairly maligned? And to your point, I know that we can never know, but there's are you familiar with Blackstone's ratio?
No.
Okay, I think it's like 17th, 18th century notion, and it is it's better that I'll read it. It's better that 10 guilty people escape than one innocent person suffers. And that's kind of enshrined in law. Like the idea is that innocence is the thing that we should be pointing to. That's the thing we protect above all. And even if guilty people kind of get away with something, then it's the innocent we need to protect. And I think it's hard to hear that or consider that, but for yourself, you'd want that. If it was me or you'd go, hey, but I know I didn't do that thing. Well, it's on the internet now.
I think that is the nature of the internet now, and you cannot protect yourself or guarantee yourself against anything, because you wouldn't leave your house, you wouldn't work, and you wouldn't have anything out there. That's the only way to 100% protect yourself on the internet. And I think everyone is susceptible to it, everyone is vulnerable to it because of how quick things are. I've seen plenty of things of people walking down the street and someone can film it and make out that he has stolen my bag and she slashed my car. but actually I think you have to trust the fact that, you know, luckily lots of things on the internet move quickly.
Right.
And, you know, it's not even that it's yesterday's news, it's
That's
last hour's news.
the reality is any one of us can be labeled anything at any given time.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, you know, the burden of proof used to be on the believer.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, if I tell you I can fly, it's up to me to prove to you that I can fly, not for, you know, it's not for you to prove that I can't.
Yeah.
But now it's like, oh no, it really is just, you got to let it go. And that's a weird place to be, isn't it? And again, the police, it's a civil matter, basically don't darken my door.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that do? It just further, entrenches this belief that the police do nothing.
Yeah.
And, what are we, so hence why these groups proliferate. You met Kyle. His story was pretty horrible. He said specifically, I tried to commit suicide.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how did that at what stage in the filming did you meet Kyle?
That was probably about halfway through.
Right. Which narratively is interesting.
Yeah, it was definitely a difficult conversation to have. And I think, talking about men's mental health is so important and something that I'm really keen to kind of understand more about. It was a difficult conversation, to sit face to face with anyone and hear that that's the turn that their life has taken. And this is because he'd been posted in the group and he deemed it, unfair. And a lot of it was about kind of doxing, is that it's totally against the rules of the group to share personal information that could lead to, people knowing where someone works, where they live, their phone number, anything like that. So when he'd been posted in these groups and that information had been shared, that's against the rules of the group. That's not what the groups endorse at all. And by chance he lives in a small town or a small village.
That was going to be one of my questions, sorry, is how micro do these groups get? Do they go to like a village level, or are they typically city town level?
Typically cities, because they only really work when you've got a substantial number of people in them to that's how they kind of work. But if you live in a small village outside of London, you probably would be part of the London group, and that's what it would cover. But the aim of the group isn't to personally, find people and make their lives a living hell. It's the fact that if you maybe were about to go on a date with this person and you'd seen that another woman had said, like, look, he wasn't for me, then it's up to you thinking, well, maybe he's not for me. And I think, that's where it's difficult. It goes that next level. And his life was definitely heavily impacted from it. And you never want to hear someone in front of you telling you, look, I've not done anything wrong, and then my life was ruined because of this. But that to me doesn't discount the world of, not necessarily the world of good, but how much of a positive impact that this group has had on so many women. And,
it cost him his job, didn't it? That's what he said. At a period of time, it cost him, his livelihood. He wasn't making money. He wasn't able to. Because, of course, his employers were like, whoa, if that's you, then see ya.
And that's just one of those things that, in the way that I think women are so passionate about trying to find these safe spaces and to protect ourselves, in the process of that, is never going to be perfect. There's people that are going to get swept up in it, who may feel they're wrongly accused, or they may actually be wrongly accused of something or treated unfairly. But all that women are trying to do is to stay safe. And I think, it's not perfect. I'll be the first one to say these groups are not perfect. They don't have perfect rules to them. They don't have perfect moderation. And you're not always going to get people using them ethically and morally and perfectly.
Yeah, I guess my because there is that entertainment aspect to it. Yeah. And again, I'm guilty of, just as everybody is, as I say, the celebrity stories and all that stuff. Yeah. I worked in PR for 18 years. I love all that stuff too. Yeah. There is something of, you can become a mini celebrity for a moment if you post something and it attracts, these likes and comments. And do you have to post anonymously?
No, you don't have to post anonymously. A lot of women choose to, in case their post gets, screenshotted and taken elsewhere.
Yeah.
And yes, it is. It's like everyone is a celebrity for a short amount of time in the group. And I think maybe that's one of my reflections is, I wish I hadn't treated it as entertainment factor beforehand. I wish I'd almost treated it as a serious kind of public
But you're a
issue.
human being, right? You're a human being.
Yeah,
These things are messy. You know, as you just touched on a minute ago. You know, these things in the middle are messy, and you know, I know I'm a guy here. You know, I've not been on the other side of it, so you know, I'm trying to understand it from from your side too. You know, which because for me, I'm like, oh Christ, that'd be horrible if I was.
yeah.
I mean, on that note, do you think there is a path to explaining oneself, redemption? You know, that idea of being able to clear your name. Is there a path?
I don't know how it works logistically, because you cannot have men in the group. Like, this just wouldn't work. And so I think, I have seen men maybe on their own personal pages just do almost like a mini statement, and it's like celeb world, and having to say
just screenshotted notes.
yeah, here's what happened, and here's my side of the story, and at the end of the day, it doesn't really involve the rest of us if we're also not dating these people. Like, I'm never going to meet you, whatever. It's kind of none of my business. But yeah, men, if they've come across the post somehow, then they might then post something about it, or say like, look, it was one date, we didn't get on, and you know what, blah blah blah, and explain themselves like that. And if that's what they want to do to make themselves feel better, then for sure that's the way to go. I wouldn't want anyone, if they felt like they haven't done anything wrong, to be in a position where they think their only option is to take their own life, because that's not right at all, and that's not what anyone in that group wishes on them.
I think we should touch on the Telegram groups. I mentioned it at the beginning. Now, there's an ugly, evil, horrible side to almost a retaliation to these groups. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, so once these Facebook groups became more popular and more people were speaking about them online, where men were then finding out about them, they were saying, hold on, this doesn't seem fair. Why don't we have the equivalent, to find out,
it's like having a no girls allowed sign on the on the treehouse, right? That's what it is.
So it's saying, well, I want my own little group. So okay, cool, go ahead, that's absolutely valid, that's absolutely fair, because the aim of the group is to find out, is someone cheating on you, or have you had an experience with this guy where you don't feel safe? Warn everyone else. If guys feel like they need to do that, then fair play. But it was different. It wasn't the equivalent. So first of all, these groups weren't being made on Facebook. And as much as Facebook might feel like a lawless place, it actually is quite stringent in terms of what gets taken down, what's deemed against community guidelines. So these groups are being set up on platforms like Telegram, which is typically known as a kind of secretive place. Even as a journalist, we often use Telegram so that your messages can't get traced back and encrypted. So they were setting up these groups. Are we dating the same girl? And quickly, the ones I'd seen, they turned into conversations that included explicit images and videos of girls that maybe they'd dated or slept with. Became a place of criminal activity, lots of drug dealing going on, and just talking about, gambling sites, things like that. So they definitely were not the same as the groups that I'd been in as girls.
It quickly became, on just again watching the documentary, it's like, well, that's doxing, that's revenge porn. These things are illegal. They're literally illegal, and it's not the same as saying, hey, I had a date and this guy was weird.
Yeah,
it's like, it's actually it almost felt like or feels like like an act of digital violence against women.
Yeah, 100%. That is what it is. This is literally women who've gone out with a guy, been filmed either with or without their knowledge, and now being shared in these groups, definitely without their knowledge. And so for men to kind of revel in these groups and say, see, this is what we deserved, and it wasn't fair that we didn't have this space before. It's like, it's just completely ridiculous, and I find it really hard that some people or find it ridiculous that people have tried to defend it as the fact that they deserve a group as much as the girls have one.
Have you seen defenses of these groups?
Yeah.
I mean, again, if there was a Facebook group, are we dating the same girl? And and I haven't checked actually. Have you looked to see if there are these groups?
Any that had been set up were not really like fully utilized or populated.
That's just men being lazy.
Yeah.
Which-
It's like,
It's
if you
because
want it so much,
in reality, it's because we don't have the same safety concerns. That's
yeah, you don't
probably
need
right.
it.
Because it's not necessary. You just go, oh, that didn't work, or it did, or whatever. Right? We're not concerned in the same way. So you can
Yeah.
quickly see those groups die a very, very quick death. I mean, what can be done? Because again, Telegram, as you said, they're not about to do anything about that. What can the police do about that? Is there anything that can be done about these kind of retaliatory groups?
Yeah, I mean, just for them to be taken seriously in the same way that, the police are very well aware of different Telegram groups, whether that's because they're looking into a drug case or they're looking into a violence case, they're not a secret to the police. So I think for them to just be high up on the priority list, alongside a lot of other crimes, which are violence against women and girls, I would say I would love for men to create more spaces where they can speak openly and honestly about dating, and not always in this kind of polished media trained way of,
Yeah. Do
hey
you know what?
man,
I've
we
seen
need
a
to
lovely
talk.
one. I've seen a lovely one started by. Do you watch Love Is Blind?
I love Love Is Blind.
Okay, Love Is Blind Series 1 UK. I just spoke to Tom Stroud,
Tom,
who
yes, I saw.
Tom's awesome. He's co-founded something called Shoulder to Shoulder, which is essentially this online and in-person group. He comes from a place of most groups created for men come from a place of men are sad, depressed, killing themselves. He's like, can we not just have something a tiny bit more hopeful where we're doing stuff together and then people being open about their situations, so and any blokes listen to this that I mean, arguably people could listen to this and be quite mad about the fact that these things happen if they didn't know. It's like there are communities out there for men.
These groups, I wish that I could kind of communicate this to a lot of men who maybe get quite defensive about it, is that they're not created out of a place of hate towards men. They are created out of a place of women who actually want to date men and they want to spend time with men. They want, you know what I mean? They want to be around good men.
Yeah.
And that the frustration is these kind of points along the road that are sometimes small little bumps or sometimes massive ditches that they can throw you completely off track. But ultimately, most people in there say, I really just want to date a really cool, nice guy. Whereas the groups that the men are creating, to me, seem to be coming from a place of hatred towards women and disrespect against women. And
I think it is. I think it's two fingers up. It's saying, "Oh, you want to do that, are you?" What's an example of something relatively small, but that could make a woman say, "Do you know what? Now I won't date that guy."
I think if a guy's lied about why he can't meet up with you, or
okay, so that's fair because I guess men are probably I'll be sat here worrying, is it they thought my hair looked stupid?
Yeah. That's not what the group is. That's not what the conversation is.
That's really good to hear because I guess actually he was 5'9".
Yeah.
Screw that guy, and then people are like, yeah, fine, I won't date him. It's like that. I think men are coming to this, and I think I read 60% of crime is committed by 1% of people. So it's like I like to think that the world's full of great people.
100%.
There, most people are kind, most people are good, most people are good people.
Yeah.
And I think men are just like, oh God, please stop judging me for things that I can't change. All that I've got a weird laugh, and now there's 100 women laughing about it in this group. It's not that. That's good to hear. That's really good to hear.
I just don't think women have the time for all of that, like nitpicking. All they want to do is just go out, have a nice time and meet someone nice. But
really cool to hear.
and if it is that case, then it's not a thing of them putting their picture in there. They might say, I went out on a date last night with this guy.
He laughed like a horse. It was weird.
Yeah, and it really put me off. Hey girls, do you have any advice on what I should text back? And so things like that, it's go for it. And you're completely protecting someone's identity there. And that is just what women used to probably do, sat round a campfire when we were living in caves. But
it's really weird. Did you see him doing the fire? Weird,
yeah. So that's just what it is, but in a digital world.
Bigger questions. If you could redesign the system, apps, police, community, what would you change?
Do you know what it sounds pessimistic, but I just don't think the apps will ever or would ever have a responsibility around safety, because they are for-profit businesses. And I think I would more redesign our mindset into realizing that if you're going to use a dating app, just remember you are ultimately paying for a service. Even if it's free, you're paying with your usage, your time, and putting your data on there. So don't expect any dating apps to have your back. It as much as it's, you know, I don't know, it's like going to McDonald's and then being annoyed that you might have put on weight. That's not what they're not there to educate you about.
You've seen some people did that. They like they sued McDonald's for being overweight. Do you see that?
Yeah. It's like, okay, that's on you. But you know, I just think that I would redesign our mindset, because these dating apps have been big now for about 12 years. Tinder came out in 2012, so we are accustomed to them. We understand them. We have the language to talk about them. But I think we're still expecting them to protect us, and I would love for them to protect us, but that's not what they're doing. The police, on the other hand, and society and community, we should be doing more to look out for each other. So I would redesign it the fact that, you know, if you're on a, not even if you're on a date, if you're in the presence of someone on a date, don't hesitate to kind of just have a look over, or if you see the girl in the bathroom, just check, is it going okay? Like, you know,
remind me, what's that thing, you know, that you ask for?
Ask for Angela. But there's
Angela,
so many bars where the staff haven't been trained and they don't know what it is, and you know, things like that. So it's just, I think, having each other's back, and men have that responsibility as well. If they see, if they see someone and they think this isn't right, or you know, you've seen a guy lead someone down an alleyway, feel free to step in. That's actually what we need, because the police can't and won't be on every corner. But we can just keep an eye out for people, you know, offer to get someone an Uber, offer to let them use your power bank so they've got, you know, phone battery to get home. And I think the more that we keep ourselves to ourselves, the less we're actually being able to notice when people are having difficult experiences. But you know, a lot of this happens behind closed doors as well, so it's really difficult.
Very true. Personally, did making this documentary change anything about how you date, how you trust people, how you vet people?
I actually have maybe only been on one date since we filmed it, and the guy annoyed me so much. I think it probably made me think, like, I'm just not going to waste my time like messaging back and forth and whatever. I just left it as it was. But has it changed my perspective? I think, you know, every time you do a documentary or a piece of work like this, I do think you gain another level of empathy, and I think I'll always try and keep that, you know, I'm not going into any situation thinking men bad, women good, whatever. I'm just trying to see things from different perspectives.
I think that's it. It's just being empathetic to women's lived experiences, the potential for, you know, the risks, or the risks to innocent men here. You know, it's just being cognizant of it all, isn't it? And knowing that both of those thoughts can exist at the same time in your head. You know, that it doesn't have to be an either or. And I worry that we're so polarized now. And, you know, almost media, social media, the internet in general, politics, we're so polarized. It's like you can't hold both of those. It's like you can say, do you know what? There are women that, you know, like, we need to be empathetic to what they've gone through. And also there are innocent men over here that feel like they need, you know, a right to reply, but don't have one. It's like, you know, we can't fix everything. You know?
Exactly.
But I do you feel safer after seeing the documentary, or do you feel more concerned?
No, I don't feel safer. I've never felt safe as a woman ever. So I think, that's maybe not changed my perspective on that. It's made me more aware, I think, of the need for good community, not just community, but good, healthy community. And if your community is you and two other pals, and you get together and you make sure you talk at least once a week, whatever, that's really important. You don't necessarily need to be in a group with hundreds of thousands of people to feel like someone has your back.
That's effectively all it is. It's just you know, it's a friendship group scaled up. But you know, but digital, and as I said, like that that ability to kind of, as we touched on, be a celebrity for a moment, is going to get those people that in if they're in a tough spot in their life, and that's going to give them the validation that they need. Maybe they twist the truth. Maybe they, there's a bit of exaggeration here or there that could be quite damaging to somebody down the line. But again, you can't account for individual differences and people in those senses. What do you hope viewers come away with? Do you think fear, caution, empathy, or anything else? What are you thinking?
Oh, I think once you put it out there, it's kind of like it's up to you how you interpret it, and if it brings about really strong feelings, it's not my job to kind of battle that or confirm that. But I think, like anything, the more we know, the better equipped we are. And I love documentaries. Like I watch documentaries all the time, and I do. I don't know about yourself, but you come away with a sense of almost power of knowing something that you didn't an hour ago or half an hour ago. So I think that's always a good thing. And I do think it's important that people see how women feel a lot of the time when dating. And so, I hope people come away feeling a little bit more knowledgeable and curious. And maybe they go and research more, or they have a level of interest. And I think where they find that information is kind of up to them.
You ask at the end of the documentary, what do we do? It's literally a very, it's a question you specifically say, what do we do? So like, what do you think your conclusions were at the end of, when all was said and done? Just more of the same? Do we just keep going as we go in, and just, here we go, we've highlighted something?
Yeah. Do you know what? I think this will all look very different in like 5 to 10 years. We all know how quickly technology is moving. Even the fact that we're talking about Facebook, but we already think Facebook is a little bit obsolete. Like, it might be that in 5 years' time, we really aren't using Facebook. So these groups do fizzle away. It might be that the retaliation groups get bigger and more known about. It might be that, with ChatGPT, the way we date is completely different. And I've already seen so much of people feeling like actually human to human interaction isn't working for them, and they get all of their affection needs from ChatGPT. And so the way that we date is going to change so quickly, so much more so than it did in the past 10 years. And I think it's really important that we almost stay vigilant and we stay aware of our surroundings. So if you are in a relationship, and a long-term relationship, I think it's really important that you don't then just think, well, dating has nothing to do with me. Dating is relevant to everyone. So making sure you're kind of stepping in there when you think someone's being a bit off, or stepping in there when you think someone might be a victim or something. And I think, dating should be everyone's business.
Do you think that dating apps will see, I've not looked at the stats, I'll be interested to, do you think that they will see a fall in use?
I think so. I just think they had such a burst and such a moment that I just personally don't think it's sustainable. And I do think people are craving that in-person connection. And when we're talking about AI, that's going to drive people more inward, that you're going to get the complete opposite, where people say, no, I maybe I work from home, or I work remotely, or I don't even have a team around me. I need to go and learn salsa in a bar, and I'm desperate. So
do you think we're going to get that cycle where, because I've always said this, I'm quite a confident person. I'd go up and say hey to somebody in a bar, but that's weird now, isn't it? Is that a strange thing to do?
I don't think it's weird. I think maybe we all keep telling each other that it's weird. I don't think it is. I think think more of that will come back.
So it's almost going to be like cyclical. I mean, everything in trends, right?
Comes around.
90s is back in this way, that way. Maybe dating, saying hi to somebody in person in a bar is going to, or in insert safe environment is going to be cool again one day. But touching on your point there about AI, and I had a conversation with somebody, the CEO of a company called Realbotics, Andrew Kigwell, his name is, and they create companions And his is he's talking about it from the sense of loneliness and how it kind of fills that gap in our needs. But the company he bought started out as a company called Real Dolls. Now that might spark a memory.
I know what that is.
Yeah. I think, and I asked him the question. I said, "Do you think there are people born today, living right now, that will never have a physical human relationship?" And he said, "It's already happening."
Already happening.
It's weird, isn't it? Like, not to shame anybody, but just when I say it's weird to think that we live in a world where that person might live 80 years, 90 years, and never experience, never be with another human being, never know what that's like, never, and I mean, do you use GPT?
I bloody hate AI. I hate it.
But it just gasses you up. All it does is gas it. So if I could say, "Hey, ChatGPT, I think I'm thinking that I could put the worst poem in the world in there, right?" And it'll be like, "Oh my god, this is incredible." So what's that going to do for our relationships when all you do is get built up and built up and built up, and nobody holds you to any sort of account? I just think, as you said, it's all going to change in the next 5-10 years. I hope it comes back around in that cyclical way we just touched on, and we can kind of just be a bit more human about things, and that we aren't hiding behind groups and dating apps and these things, and that people can feel that bit safer. Besides the documentary, you've done a few others for Untold. You did the BBL one. How did you find that? We won't go into anywhere near the same depth on that one, but so what is a BBL for the uninitiated?
So this was last year. We did a documentary about women that basically were victims of really dodgy plastic surgery clinic in Turkey, and we were looking into how Turkey has become the absolute #1 spot for this kind of plastic surgery tourism, especially people from the UK and Europe just heading straight there for what they are sold as cheap, quick, easy, and you're going to recover poolside with a cocktail in hand.
75% discount. Like if something costs 10 grand, it's going to cost 2.5 grand over in Turkey. Right, that's the kind of cost we're talking.
But you're paying with the fact that a lot of these companies are just taking advantage of the fact that people hear Turkey and they think that it's world class and that everyone knows what they're doing, and there's lots of clinics that really are not running to the standard that they should be, and women are falling seriously ill and being really mistreated, especially Black women who are kind of sold something that this is going to be perfect for you because we deal with lots of patients just like you, everything from playing Afrobeats music in the clinic to targeting them directly on social media. And then the outcome, as you can probably expect, is that things don't always go well. And I met women who ended up with kind of flesh-eating bacteria, lifelong injuries, lifelong scarring, with not any compensation or acknowledgement or apology from these clinics. So if you weren't already put off from major surgery, then I'm always the person, if you get stuck talking to me at a dinner party, I'll tell you all the reasons why you shouldn't get a BBL. And BBL basically stands for Brazilian butt lift, where they take the fat from your stomach and your back and then inject it into your bum and your hips. But it's a very risky surgery and has the #1 cause of death for any elective plastic surgery. So
and these are both these documentaries are available on both YouTube and Channel 4. We should say. As a presenter, do you do anything that's slightly more uplifting?
You're like, where's the fun? So actually, I present on Hits Radio, which is a kind of pop music radio station, and so I start every single day with just being super upbeat and getting to talk about what Dua Lipa's been up to and what the celebs are wearing on the red carpet. So I think that definitely almost like scratches that itch of just bringing a bit of joy and positivity to people. And then in terms of investigations, I think that's just documentaries, isn't it? When you're kind of exposing something or uncovering something, sadly it's very unlikely it's of a positive nature, but I will try. Maybe for my next, I'll try and do something a bit more uplifting.
No, I mean, they're fantastic. They really are. You do a great job in especially, as you say, 25 minutes. There's so much to cover. The edit, that editing process must be brutal. Are you involved in
Yeah.
the edit?
Luckily, no. That's
Right.
not my
You're
remit.
just
But
like,
yeah,
guys, you do you. Yeah, I'll just.
yeah.
So with what's your favourite red carpet moment that you've been involved with?
Oh, good question. Do you know what? I love the Brit Awards every year. I think like the Brits are very underrated in what we kind of take to the rest of the world. And for all my complaints about the UK, I'm like, we do have some good moments, and whether that's like performances, like Jade performed at the Brit Awards. Jade, who used to be in the Little Mix, and I thought that was amazing. But yeah, and I'm almost like looking forward to next year, because from February is when we have the Grammys. That's obviously in the US, but the Grammys, the Brits, and then it'll be Oscars and movie season and award season. And I just love everything about like pop culture and seeing what's going on. So
Is that what kind of took you into presenting? Is that like, so as a kid, were you always that person, you know, love the celebrity stuff, and that's what took you into it?
Not really. I always loved music, and I loved magazines. I would buy like 10 magazines a week, and
What would you get?
I was very much
all of
like
that.
Heat magazine, yeah, and like Grazia and Hello and all of that kind of stuff. But actually, in terms of presenting, I started in lockdown, and it's because I found there were certain things I was getting really frustrated about. I lived in a house of 28 people in a warehouse, yeah, and there was, and I was for most parts of it the only person of color, and I just found myself really frustrated with things that would go on, and conversations or people's viewpoints of things, and I found myself wanting to kind of really express myself. And so yeah, I got into radio, and then like presenting on social media and stuff during that time, and then just kind of pushed it from there.
How did you do that? Just out of interest, I don't know your path into it. So how do you think, right, that's what I want to do? So anybody listening to this, it thinks, do you know what, that sounds awesome. I'd love to get up at silly o'clock. Bless you. Thank you for doing it. How do you go from I want to do that to actually doing it?
It's completely different now from when I started, because of things like TikTok and Instagram are definitely great pathways in. So if there was anyone listening now who thinks, you know, I'd love to be either a journalist or a presenter, or broadcaster of any kind, I would say definitely utilize your own platforms. You don't have to have the biggest following in the world, but you have to be able to demonstrate that you can talk to people, that you can either hold a conversation or put your point of view across. But for me, I just asked around, and I would ask like radio producers and TV commissioners. I'd be like, what do you need from me? What do you need me to do? And they'd say, okay, I need you to go away and get better at being able to get across this point of view. So, but okay, and I'd go and practice by even like voice noting my friends about a certain topic, and I'd just try and stick to one point. I would do more writing so that I could see how I'd structure things, and then I'd start filming my own mini documentaries. I was applying for things constantly. So I'd say, yeah, definitely talk to people, and be open to getting real feedback. It's not, people aren't always going to gas you up and tell you you're amazing. You almost want to ask people, what do I need to be better at? But then run off, go and do that, and then come back to them and say, okay, now what? Because yeah, if I can do it during COVID, when no one would let me into a radio studio, no one would let me into a TV production, then yeah, definitely nowadays it's a lot easier.
Who inspires you?
I'd say most Black women who have been in broadcasting. So everyone from Clara Amfo to Makita Oliver, Gemma Kearney, June Sarpong, Fleur East, Maya Jama, AJ Adudu. Like, I think you don't realize the realities of being a Black or mixed race woman almost in the public eye until you start doing it. And I'm still very early on in my journey, and I'm like, okay, it's a lot. I have even more respect for them now than I used to, because it can feel like an uphill battle in the UK.
What have you, like, are there any kind of moments you can touch on there that you can kind of point to as, you know, where you think, do you know what, that's just not easy, not as easy for me?
People underestimate you and people pigeonhole you. So yeah, and I think everyone can have can reel off situations and scenarios, but I find that quite boring, because that's almost what happened. It might have happened last week, or it might have happened last month, but actually I think it's you're kind of constantly just trying to remind people that you're worthy, that you're eloquent, that you also are interested in a real range of things. It's not always, people might assume you're into a certain type of music, or a certain type of fashion, or a certain type of subject matter. And I think I've tried to challenge myself by doing a range of topics, just to kind of prove that, I won't pigeonhole myself. So the industry doesn't need to pigeonhole me either.
It's funny, I was talking to a comedian, Sakisa. I don't know if you've come across Sakisa, stand-up comedian, immigration rights lawyer, burlesque performer, wrestling podcast host, and she's black, and she's like, I have to almost explain, like, I love wrestling, I love like rock music and metal. I shouldn't have to explain why I do. It's just like, because it's not weird that I do. And it was just a really nice moment. I thought it's just like, that's it's something that most people wouldn't even consider, because as you say, the pigeonholing why, like, musically, it's like I'm gonna like a range of things.
Exactly. So, but no, it's great, and we have great representation now compared to when I was a kid. Even seeing who's on TV and who's hosting these big things like the Brit Awards, or hosting red carpet. So yeah, I take my hat off to them.
Do you know what? I was speaking to Mr. Motivator. Do you remember him?
Yeah.
How old are you? And this can get edited out, because
I'm 31. You can keep
31.
It in.
Okay. How do you remember Mr. Motivator? Everybody else my age remembers him, but then it's almost, it feels like a cut-off point at like early 30s. I'm like,
I watched enough daytime TV, I think, for him to have made some appearances.
But he said to me, he was like, it wasn't until his 40s that he kind of was on TV, and he was really having to fight hard as a black man in TV. And he was like, and I was speaking to a friend of mine recently, mixed race kid, and he went, Rich, loved the fact that you spoke to him, because when I was growing up, I turned the TV on and he's one of the only black faces on it. And I was like, it's just like, obviously as a white person, you don't even think about that. I'm 7 or whatever I am, when he's on TV, and I'm like, I just think he's awesome, and he's colourful and he's funny. Like,
that's it.
Colourful for the edit with his lycra, we should say, for anybody that doesn't know him. But so what's your hope? What's your aspiration? What do you want to do with presenting?
Honestly, just keep on being able, like, to tell the stories that I find interesting, to keep on actually just being a reminder that you don't have to stick to one thing. And I think presenting is great, and I love it. I love media, but I see that in so many different forms. Like, I want to write a book, and I want to put on more events, and and because media is changing so quickly, I could say today, I want to be the number one podcaster in the world, but in 5 years, is it going to be something else that kind of captures our attention? Obviously TV is changing so quickly, and people thought terrestrial TV maybe was on its way out, but then we see, like, The Traitors comes on and everyone's obsessed and talking about it. So I think, like, I love when TV has those kind of moments. So I'd love to kind of really get stuck in with, like, big production TV shows. I love to carry on doing radio. I do voiceover as well. I'd love to have more time to write. So yeah, I think just kind of keep on keeping on. But I wouldn't know what I'll kind of end up doing, because
what
I think
would you write?
things will change. I really want to write a book for people starting out in the media industry, and just the things I've learned along the way. Maybe a bit of motivation. Maybe I need to speak to Mr. Motivator for that, but
honestly, you cannot come away from that man and feel anything other than uplifted. He's the best. I knocked on his door and he looked at me and he didn't say hi, he just shook my hand. He went, "Do you want some soup?" I'm all right. I don't want to put you to it. He went, "You haven't even asked what flavour it is yet." And then, like, he was like, "You're having soup," so he did me a bowl anyway with his family, and it's just like,
That's so
it's
sweet.
immediately, and I'm really glad I did. I read a Guardian article, an interview with him just before, and the journalist didn't take his shoes off in his house. And apparently, Mr. Derek said to him, he's like, not taking your shoes off. Okay, so the first thing I did was take my, made a big show of taking my shoes off, right? And you could just, he went.
Good.
So yeah, I'm going to keep doing this, keep going. I've had some awesome people, and I'm really glad that this happened really quickly, didn't it?
Yeah, no,
So thank
I'm
you.
grateful for you having me. I really
No,
appreciate
God,
it.
not at all. And I think it's important to say it's like, you know, I hope that you didn't worry coming into this that it'd be, you know, blow, you know, about the you know, the groups. I'm genuinely interested, and that's, I hope that comes across as just curiosity. Like, I'm not part of these groups. I can't be. So, you know, I want to know what's going on just as much as you do. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, hopefully it's reassuring, and maybe it would be a comfort to more people for them to know, you know, that it's not, you know, women being in there being malicious for the sake of it. It's literally just like, okay, here's what's up, and here's how I want to protect myself. And I do think, you know, dating in general, we do all think it's those little things of, oh, they won't like me because I had food in my teeth, when actually it's like, we don't like you because you said something that was wildly out of line, so let's all work on that, men and women. But yeah, we definitely, you know, there's a lot more common ground, and I think anyone who's in a relationship will probably know that, of like, you know, you get an insight, you know, if you're in a heterosexual relationship, you get an insight into how the other sex kind of thinks and lives, and you're like, oh, okay, now I get it.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
This has been really, really fun. Considering it's quite a dark topic, you know, I think we've managed to keep it light enough. So, no, Mary, really appreciate it. It's lovely to meet you properly. Well, ish.
Yeah.
You know, through a screen. And yeah, let's you know, next time you do a documentary, let's pick back up again.
Yeah.
That'd be really cool.
Thank you so much, Richard.
Cheers,
it's
Mary.
been an absolute joy. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Speak to you in a bit. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. And we are back. Illuminating. Enlightening. I hope you enjoyed. I got an awful lot from that and felt some real, I guess, sympathy towards women for the reasons that these things do exist, but also came out still feeling that same empathy for the men that you know, might be being dragged through, you know, dragged into the gutter a little bit. And I think room can and should exist in your mind for both of those things, where these things exist whether we like it or not now. It's what we do about it. It's how we understand them. It's how we react. And this is life. Let's you know, forearmed is forewarned. Is that the saying? Probably butchered that, but anyway. Thank you, as ever. I am back next week with a fantastic episode. The next run of episodes is really interesting. Again, it's some of those curiosity gap episodes. My next conversation is with a dream expert, a sleep expert called Charlie Morley, who specializes in lucid dreaming. Lucid dreaming is where you're dreaming and you know you're dreaming. And he works with business leaders, CEOs, entrepreneurs, athletes at the highest levels, and military personnel with their complex PTSD cases very often to use lucid dreaming in a way to support their mental health, and for athletes, for instance, to, you know, improve their performance. You know, you got to think about it. If you're a tennis player or a footballer, and you know, you can practice taking a penalty 50 times in a day, 100 times in a day. You could then practice that potentially thousands of times in your sleep. So yeah, it's fascinating. Really, really interesting stuff. I'll leave you with that and hope to see you back next week. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen or watch. It makes a massive difference. If you're on YouTube, do the subscribe thing, but press the bell. You'll be notified when new episodes come out. We are inching towards 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, which is mental. So thank you for that. Just loving doing this, really am. It's keeping me moving. It's keeping me positive. So thank you. I will be back on Monday. Have a good one.